new child safety features, the Apple Watch on ice, and automatic Mac updates. This is MacVoices. MacVoices is supported by the MacVoices Slack. Discussions, questions, and answers, and a place to talk tech with your friends. The MacVoices Slack is available to all patrons of MacVoices. Sign up at patreon.com/MacVoices and join in. Okay, this one I paid a little bit of attention to, but I felt like it was important to bring it up because it's another Apple story, obviously. But it has a new child safety features and a little bit different approach to age assurance. And I guess it's been now probably a couple months ago, we talked about how Australia was trying to keep kids under 16 off of social media. So the whole child age verification thing is a big deal. Child safety is obviously a big deal, as it should be. So Apple has some new controls, and they're in my mind they're trying to address things. Funny thing is, other than this particular article, I didn't see a lot more than just this. I didn't see a lot of people saying yay or nay. It just sort of laid there. So anybody have any thoughts on this? I don't know if we have any. Yeah. Do we have any parents here? Well, Marty, you're closest with it being in the education world.
Yeah. I think it is a good story for Apple. And I think it also underlines Apple's focus on having parents being able to create control and entry levels with their kids through their devices. The other piece of the story is I think Apple's trying to get away from having to collect data, at least sensitive data on people. And instead of trying to become a net nanny, they're really kind of saying, developer, if you're creating an app that is geared at a certain age range or it involves anything other than adults, then you need to build it into your system to be able to assure that the plugins are in, the APIs are in, to be able to check the age and data. So they're getting out of that part of the plan, which I think was always Apple's desire, not to collect that kind of data on users.
And it appears from, if I understand the article correctly, that it really is giving these tools to parents as opposed to putting itself in the role of mandating what they can and can't see.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I mean, they wrote a white paper about it, so give parents some good guidance as well.
Yeah, I looked at the white paper and I thought, I'm not sure if I'm a parent, I'm going to wade my way through all of this, that it's that important. Just give me the button to push. And they do have that built into the system in terms of parental controls. I was impressed with it, and also impressed with the way that Apple made the argument. We do not want to try and get government sensitive information from our users or people who buy our devices. If they're making a choice to use your app, and they have it all set up, I mean, in the App Store, you can go through what, besides what it's going to cost you on subscriptions, there's all sorts of information that you can get when a parent can look at an app and find that out. So I think it's well played.
Dave, were you saying something?
Well, I said, I was going to go back and say, yeah, at least they kept it short. 8 pages for a white paper is pretty short, considering most tech companies are going to probably write longer white papers than that. So and it's pretty straightforward and to the point.
Yeah, it just feels like, I don't know, to me, it feels like we're seeing more and more of this concern over children and everybody trying to pass absolute judgments. And as I said earlier, I'm a big fan of this idea that you're giving the parent the opportunity to choose how much protection to not give your child, but to wrap around your child, and it addresses the issue of, because listen, I know people at 25 that should still have parental controls on.
Yeah.
In fact, some of them might be on this panel, but we're not going to call any names.
I was waiting for you to name drop me on that one.
No, it's not. No, but just the idea that you're not mandating or saying we know better than everybody else. That but here's a tool that lets you make the decisions and adjust it for your child.
Marty keyed in on what for me was one of the biggest bits out of this, which is Apple explaining why they don't want to be the arbiter of your personal information in this way. And I agree with Apple's argument. I think the onus should be on the app developers. And but giving them a tool, okay, too many pronouns here. Apple giving developers the tools that they need so that they can get the age verification they need without oversharing on the part of the customer. I think that's great. And I'm sure part of this, from Apple's perspective, is the idea that the best way to ensure that that your customers' data is not stolen or lost in any sort of data breach or other event is to never have that data in the first place. And I think that's big for Apple. They do not want to have any more information on users than is absolutely necessary.
Yeah.
Let me qualify that. They do not want to have any more personal information on users than is absolutely necessary. There's a lot of other data. They are collecting troves of data, but that personally identifying information, at least it looks like they're doing what they can to steer clear of that.
You know what, Jeff? Jeff and Marty both. I hadn't thought about it exactly that way. That it could be viewed as a little bit self-serving, but in a positive way. That it serves a bunch of different areas. That it helps Apple by not having it, so they can't be accused of losing it. It also puts the power into the parents' hands. So I hadn't considered the first part of that. Okay.
Yep.
Interesting. Oh yeah. Marty said the kids are just going to use AI to figure out how to change the parental controls. Okay. So you don't buy the kid an Apple Intelligence powered iPad.
Yeah. Life finds a way.
Well,
Yeah, well-
Google can help them too.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, Webb has made it home tonight, and he said no fast car tonight.
Okay.
He's in his SUV due to a blizzard forecast overnight. Well, that's a good reason to drive your SUV, Webb. Yeah. Yeah. Well, okay. So since Webb, thank you for the transition. That's perfect because the next one is that the National Hockey League's officials are starting to use Apple Watches.
Nice.
Nice. Okay, that's good.
Nice.
I actually read this article, Chuck.
Oh, did you? Okay, great.
That's because it's short.
It is short. So, yeah, thank you, Dennis, for that. Okay, so yes, the Apple Watch, it's being used for National Hockey League officials. That's interesting. Okay, what makes it really interesting is that this isn't just, hey, these guys, and actually, I don't know, are hockey officials all men, or can you be any gender?
No.
Okay, so now I know. All right, so
They wear tights though.
Yeah. And costumes.
Yeah, the costumes. Yeah,
they all wear costumes,
striped
All right,
costumes.
so these people, they're using the Apple Watch, but the thing is, the watch is using a custom app that was developed just for the hockey league for the refs to use. So they're getting information on the ice that they need just right there on their wrist.
Right.
And it's not, to me, it's not just, hey, these people are using Apple Watch. It's the whole package deal, which makes it probably more difficult to next year say, and now Samsung is the official smartwatch of NHL rule keeper people. I forgot the word. Referees. Umpires.
Referees.
Okay.
Jeff, I think it's a good point. But the thing that I was much more impressed with is that for this article and for some others I read, that this puts some critical information on the wrists of the referees rather than having to look up, especially when they're skating around with a bunch of crazy people that are also skating around chasing a puck. That, now they don't have to look up and try to figure out, okay, where's the scoreboard and what does it say? The information is right there on their wrist. And again, from what I understand, there can be haptic alerts for different aspects of the game that the referees need to be aware of. But now they don't have to have audible signals or whatever. They can just have it on the wrist. So there's a safety factor here. There's, I think, an improvement in the overall flow of the game here.
But I'm sorry.
No, I agree with this knowing hockey. When 1 minute's left in the period, you hear the announcer saying it. That's the only sport that you have an announcer actually exclaiming that there's 1 minute left in the period. That helps the refs. But now with them having this on their watch and getting the haptic feedback to tell them this is huge. Skating on the ice, the scoreboards are way up high into the ceiling. They have to look up and look around, and then plus they're on skates. So, not the same thing. They're very skilled skaters. I mean, but to not get so distracted, why not have it right on your wrist there? I mean, they're also talking about potentially helping them from their wrists, whether because they have a rule where the skaters can't go over the blue line that's nearest to the goal. If the team goes over before the puck makes it over, then that's called an offside. So that's always been a challenge as far as how to sense when that happens. The ref is always, that's why they have a linesman. They're all named by different types of referees. So when the linesman's at the blue line, they see it firsthand. But there's times it's hard to see because it's fast action. The players are just flying over those lines. To have something that they're talking about this, they're going to potentially do this with the watch, where it'll actually have a sensor and tell you if someone had gone over before the puck made it over. The puck handler went over the line.
Let me jump in and say, NHL, if you're listening, I want a piece of this action.
Yeah.
Make an app for the iPhone, like the MLB does, but have all of this data available to a user's watch. So when I'm watching the game, I can look at my watch and get the same data, because it's not that they're putting in sensitive data, they're just using it for information. So why not sell it as a subscription app for people who want to watch an NHL game?
And this is going to happen in all sports. I mean, even the NFL is already exploring it for next season for the first down line. When the players have to, there's 4 downs and you have to go. First downs is the first time you start with the ball, and then you have second down, third down, and fourth down's last one. If you don't make it, then you got turned over to the team. So, but the problem is the first down marker when you're close to getting that first down has always been inaccurate, because they're using the chain gang, the chains, and they have to bring the chains out to the field, and they have to bring it over, and it's hard for them to see it, and because the referees in that sport have to be very accurate and they're looking down and seeing where the player finished and got tackled. Well, now they're going to have these sensors. I don't know if it's going to include an Apple Watch. I wouldn't be surprised if it doesn't. That there's going to actually be actual sensors that will sense where the player was at the time the play was called dead, so they can be more accurate with first down plays. So it seems to be happening in a lot of sports. It's happening in baseball. The baseball's having the strike zone, because that's been always a pet peeve of a lot of baseball players, and a lot of players end up getting ejected a lot of times because they're arguing balls and strikes. Well, they're taking a lot of that part of the game where everybody liked that, and now you're going to have a sensor. It's going to tell you whether that was a ball or a strike. So we're going to start saying, "Oh, do we really need umpires?" Well, yeah, you still need it to some extent, but this is going to help them be better at what they do.
Well, it's in tennis.
And tennis too, yeah, with the line judges, yeah, exactly.
So, I mean, and Dave, you're right, and I feel like this kind of harks back to something Marty said. And Marty, I know you were being a little flip, but as far as teaching to AI tools,
Right.
and or do you want to just continue to teach as you did in the 50s and 60s? And look, let's face it, there's a lot of money on the line in sports.
Yes.
And doing some of this stuff takes the possibility of mistakes out of the game, or at least reduces them. If you want to take it a little bit further, I'd like to think that there's no corruption in any of these sports, but you just don't know. And, now, unless somebody is going to be technically adept and hack things, you've got a much better chance of having calls being made accurately, regardless of which sport we're talking about.
Right.
So, but Marty, you intrigued me with your comment, because I wish Brian were here, because he'd probably know. I can't believe the NHL doesn't already publish that stuff in an app somewhere.
It's too new.
I don't have the NHL app. If they have an app,
they do have
they do have an app. But it would be fun. I mean, probably post game you get a lot of information, it's accessible. But I'm real time. When the refs are getting it, there's no reason why it couldn't be streamed to users. Yeah.
There are some real time stats in that app when you're following the game, but yeah, it could be better. There's no question.
And this is we're on the same topic, but we're sort of off track here, but I'll go anyway. But it seems like every sport has become statistics crazy.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, baseball always sort of was. Then Moneyball came along, and now
that was a great movie.
I mean, there are so many stats on every single sport. I mean, the stats that I can access on the PGA Tour and the players are just staggering. And now are they particularly useful, or are they just interesting?
Yeah.
Doesn't matter. They're there, and if there's an audience for it, great. And if not, then it's just raw data that might be put to use sometime. So I don't know. That was a deep dive. Sorry, Dave. Go ahead.
That's it. By the way, the description of all the plays I did was for Mr. Gamet's benefit, so you knew what we were talking about.
Thank you. I do appreciate that.
Yeah. And Jeff, in case you were confused, it was the sport he was talking about was the one with the oblong ball, not the round one.
Right.
The one with the oblong ball.
It looks like it's a pigskin.
Yeah.
That just sounds so unsanitary.
Moving on.
Moving on.
I think we've stunned the chat room. Nobody's commenting. Either we're doing a great job, or they just can't believe it again.
I think they're secretly having a discussion. Like, they have their own private channel, and they're debating whether or not my whole thing about sports ignorance is just an act for comedic value.
Hence the costumes.
Hence the costumes. Spoiler.
It's not an act.
much to my dad's disappointment.
Oh, and thank you, Barry. At least we know that you're alive. Yeah. Barry asked. I asked said they're disturbingly quiet, and Barry's response is, "Would you rather us be quietly disturbing?"
Well.
I'm not going to dignify that, Barry, with an answer.
Yeah.
Why not both?
Well, could be. Could be. This is an article, the Eclectic Light Company. If you're not familiar with the blog, this is one that gets pretty technical pretty quick.
Yeah.
And so if you pull this article up, read the first part, read the last part. Don't worry about everything in between, because it is quite deep. That said, though, it appears that your Mac can update macOS when you don't want it to. I'm curious to see if anybody's had this happen, because I have had it happen, and I honestly was kind of confused that I didn't remember doing the update, and I had maybe intentionally not been doing the update. Happily, it didn't cause me any trouble, but it was one of those weird things like, okay, one day I was running this version of the OS, and the next day I was running the other version of a newer version of the OS. I'd never okayed the update. In fact, there were some reasons I wasn't doing it. Again, it all turned out in the end just fine. But this was kind of disturbing if you have applications that might go out of date or not be compatible with a subsequent version of macOS that you rely on. Anybody else have you noticed this or seen this?
No, I mean, the article shows that, you can go into the settings and say either on or off, install macOS updates and install application updates from the App Store. You're supposedly supposed to control that. I haven't seen it happen. This is of course on a consumer machine. I mean, it's good to have the security responses and system files to still be installed, because those are pretty high risks. At very minimal, you could also turn off download new updates when available, because that could help prevent it. But I'm not sure where that goes. I'll take this a spin a little further on the enterprise side for business. That's the biggest problem. You want to be able to control it not installing, and companies have to do that, because if that update installs, especially when like we've gone from Sonoma to Sequoia, companies aren't ready for that yet. They want to be able to. They need to have application compatibility testing before that gets installed out, especially with security updates. If security updates if the software doesn't currently work with the latest OS, you don't want it to be updating it, because you know how Apple can get very aggressive in wanting you to upgrade to the next version of macOS. Same thing goes with the updates. In Sequoia, we are now at 15.3.1. Do you want to update that? We got to make sure everything looks okay before you install it. So companies have to hold back on it, and the only way to control it is by their controls, like an MDM, like Jamf or something like that. So, but on the other end, the consumers, you should be able to control it by those checkoffs. If it's pushing it, then that's a little bit of a concern. And I think that should be brought up to Apple. It's like, hey, we're not ready to install this yet. I don't want to upgrade. But the thing is, we always talk about it on both our shows here, saying that there's, it's important to install these. There's pretty serious security updates that have to be dealt with, and you should install it. But that's the .1 increments. But when you're going, like, let's say 15.2 to 15.3 in this case with Sequoia, then those are you can kind of hold back a little bit and make sure everything is okay and there's no issues with compatibility. Got to do research on it, and then go ahead and do it. I mean, that's the rule you do, Chuck, right? You don't update your OSs right away, because you want to make sure. Same thing with iOS. You always hold back a few days just to make sure there's nothing crazy. And believe me, all the history of us doing all our updates, there's been times where you installed it and then it broke something, and then you regret it. Doesn't happen all the time, but that's a lot of people's rules. You want to just hold back and wait a few days to see if there was any complaints.
Yeah.
I have a question about this, and Jim, if anyone here could shed some light on this, I'm guessing it's you. There's a point in this article where the author says that they clicked the thing to let it install that night, and then it never happened. But then later on, the thing that they didn't want to happen actually did. Is it possible that there's a bug in this whole updater process where it failed to do the thing he didn't want it to do when he went ahead and clicked it anyhow, but then however long later, that flag finally popped up where it needed to, and so it forced the update to happen based on him, I'm assuming days or weeks prior, clicking the thing just to make it go away?
Is it possible? Sure, anything's possible. Monkeys can type Shakespeare, right?
So they say, yeah.
It doesn't sound like a likely scenario, but I mean, usually when things fail, they just, like crash, or, they don't like magically do something organized at some other. I mean, but weird things happen sometimes. But
highly unlikely.
I mean, the other, to me, it seems more likely that he didn't really remember what he did, or something like that. We all do a lot of things, and for something that was like 10 hours ago, I know sometimes I think I did something, and oops, find out later, oh, I didn't do that thing. Not surely I did.
Yeah,
Isn't I supposed to take those pills?
If this were anyone else, I would say that's a very likely scenario. But Howard Oakley runs the Eclectic Light Company blog, and I mean Howard really knows his stuff,
right?
And so that's.
I'm going to push back on that. I mean, he does. I've subscribed to him for a long time, and I read all his stuff, but sometimes he's a little fast and loose, and he's put stuff out that's like not correct. So,
Jim, I'm the first one to admit that some of this is way beyond my expertise. So I look at sort of the setup and I look at the conclusion. What's in between to justify it is beyond my understanding. So I'm not. You're not pushing back. You're just stating what you see, and you would be in a much better position to understand all the justification information he put in here. So that said, I can say that categorically, I'm sure that at those times, because I know there was a period when I wasn't doing updates as frequently as Apple would have liked, again, for reasons. And so I was very, very conscious of not wanting to update. When it said, you can't update, you should update, no, no, no. And then one day I woke up and it was updated. So
I know something I just found out, like, I think yesterday or maybe even this morning, from a Michael Sy post. On my phone, I don't let apps automatically update. So I have to go to the App Store and do each one. And I still have Twitter on my phone. I don't have X because I never press the update button, and it still works too. But I've noticed that a lot of times, so I'll go in and I'll be like, okay, update. I'm doing it now. Update, update, update. And then like 30 seconds later, I'll be like, oh, a bunch of apps that I pressed the button, now they say update again. And
I have seen that too.
I thought what was happening was that it wasn't doing the update. But I just saw a blog post, like I said, in the last 24 hours, and apparently, and again, this is observation, I never looked close enough to realize it. Apparently, it is doing the update, but then incorrectly realizing that. So if you go in and look at the app, it's been updated, but the App Store thinks it isn't, and it wants you to do the update again to make them, remove it from the list.
Huh.
That's interesting. I always assumed, because I've seen the same behavior, but I always assumed that maybe there were multiple updates released back to back. It was installing the first one, and then the first after that, it was allowing the second one to be installed. So that was.
I can see why you might think that, but it's Apple's not going to keep older. If you waited and 3 updates came out, it's only going to give you the latest one. The App Store doesn't keep the old ones around. So I thought it was just forgetting. I thought there was something like, oh, I told it to update, but I did too many and it forgot. But apparently, no, it actually is just getting confused, and even though it's done it, it doesn't realize it's done it.
Huh.
Or
I
at
always
least-
assumed it was just an update that failed,
Yeah.
Exactly.
so it stayed
That's
on
what
the
I.
list.
That's
Mhm.
what I always thought. And I don't really know. I mean, this is just a blog. Like I think it was on Michael's size thing. So, and it was describing exactly what I see. And there was somebody that was having a problem because they needed the update for of some app, and so that somebody figured out that, oh, if I go in and open the app, it actually has been updated, but the App Store doesn't know it, and it will just force you to do the whole update again.
I mean, either way, I'm not sure it really hurts anything. It just is an interesting behavior.
Well, it's
Now I'm
annoying because
wondering-
you're like, oh, I pressed this button. I know I pressed, and all of a sudden 5 of these apps say update again. It's like, oh, I've got to go back and press the button again. So it's annoying from that point of view. But that just goes to show you that sometimes bugs can be really weird.
Now I'm wondering
Yeah.
if someone could figure out how to turn that into an exploit. I mean, anything is possible.
Which one, Jeff? The one Howard
The
described,
failure
or-
to recognize that an app has been updated.
I don't know.
Thanks.
How would you?
I have
You're
no
still-
idea.
You're still locked into. It's just Apple's code that's doesn't give you some way to make it do something other than.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, we know
There's plenty of
15.3.
exploitable problems out in the world, so.
Yeah. So they don't need this one.
Marty?
I was going to say we know 15.3.2 is going to be the Gamet update because it's going to be a security update that the exploit that Jeff just said was probable or possible.
Yep.
Yeah. Jeff, you've got an update named after you.
Great.
It's
I
sort of
have
like the
noticed
first
that
person.
This only seems to happen when I do a lot of updates in a row. Like if I do only 2 or 3 at a time, it doesn't ever do this.
Yeah.
But
It's
if I
like
go
on the
bam,
days
bam,
when
bam,
you
bam,
have
bam, bam.
23
Yeah, or 47.
or 47. Yeah. I mean, I've been there, Jim. I've had the thing where it's like, seriously, there's over 40 apps that have to update. All right. Guess I'm not going to the grocery store yet.
Visit MacVoices.com for show notes and to connect with Chuck on social media. Get involved in our Facebook group or like our Facebook page, and get more out of your Apple tech with MacVoices Magazine, free on Flipboard and on the web. And if you find value in it all, consider supporting us through either our Patreon campaign at patreon.com/MacVoices or by making a one-time donation via the PayPal link on our front page and in the show notes of each episode. You will join these fine people who help bring you Mac Voices. Advertising handled by Backbeat Media at backbeatmedia.com. Bandwidth provided by CacheFly at cachefly.com.